This is Sean Radcliff. Welcome to another episode of Preservation Oaks. In this series, we introduce you to professionals from museums, cultural, genealogical, and historical societies across the United States. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. We've got an awesome program lined up for you. Today we're excited to welcome Ms. Brooke Clement, the director of the Gerald R. Ford Library and Museum located in Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids, Michigan. The museum is packed with cool exhibits that let you dive into the lives of President and Mrs. Ford. You'll get to learn about American citizenship and maybe even find some quiet moments to reflect. But that's not all. Besides the permanent exhibits, there are always new and exciting temporary exhibits featuring artifacts from museums all over the country. There's always something fresh to see. The Ford Museum opened its doors to the public in September 1981 and is part of the Presidential Library System under the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, a federal agency. While the museum is in Grand Rapids and the library is in Ann Arbor, they function as one awesome institution with a shared director. By the end of this episode, we hope you'll have a newfound appreciation for President and Mrs. Ford, their important role in history, and the amazing lives they led. We also hope you'll see just how cool the Ford Museum and Library are and the great work they do in the community. Getting involved with and supporting this place isn't just about learning history. It's about building civic pride, getting educated, and connecting with others who share your interests. Hey, I'm Sean Radcliff, and I'm coming to you from Salt Lake City. And this is Preservation Oaks, the original talk program on MicroStream Radio where we feature information about museums, cultural and heritage institutions, associations, historical and genealogical societies, and history-focused media creators across the United States. By the way, our main platform is preservationoaks.podbean.com, but you can find us on nearly all podcast platforms as well as Rumble, Getter, Minds, TikTok, Facebook, Odyssey, and YouTube. So wherever you listen to the program, I appreciate it very much when you like, comment, follow, or subscribe. Hey, if you're interested in being a guest on our program, or if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at preservationoaks@gmail.com. First off, a big shout out to all of you who've been spreading the word about our program. Your support means the world to us. By helping us reach more people, you're shining a spotlight on the incredible heroes of Preservation Oaks and giving them the recognition they truly deserve. So thank you for being awesome. Unlike a lot of podcasts out there, we don't ask for money from our listeners. Nope, we do this because we love showcasing the amazing work of organizations who are our Preservation Oaks. These folks are the real-life heroes, dedicating themselves to protecting and preserving our history every single day. They're like the superheroes of our nation, working tirelessly to safeguard our heritage and make sure future generations can learn from the past. And guess what? You can be a hero too. Just by sharing our program and helping it grow, you're joining the mission to support these incredible efforts. So let's keep the momentum going, spread the word, Support your local society or museum, and together we can make sure our rich heritage is preserved for generations to come. Thank you for being part of this amazing journey. Hey everyone, get ready for the next episode of Preservation Oaks. This time we're hanging out with Ms. Megan Smith from the Fighting Falcon Military Museum. Their mission? To make history come alive with the amazing stories of U.S. wars and conflicts, all seen through the eyes of the brave folks from Greenville, Michigan and nearby areas. They've got an awesome collection of uniforms, weapons, and gear, each with a personal story from someone who served. These aren't just old items. They're pieces of local history that keep the memories of our community's heroes alive. We can't wait to chat with Megan and dive into the cool history of the museum and Greenville, Michigan. It's going to be a blast, so don't miss it. But wait, did you know there are 15 presidential libraries across the United States? Yep, that's right. They're like treasure troves of history, packed with papers, records, and other cool stuff from U.S. presidents. Let's take a quick trip through history. First up, we've got the Franklin D. Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum, established in 1941 and located in Hyde Park, New York, the very first presidential library. Then there's the Harry S. Truman Library and Museum, located in Independence, Missouri, and dedicated in 1957. It was the first to be established under the provisions of the Presidential Libraries Act of 1955, which made presidential libraries a part of the federal government. And who could forget the Dwight D. Eisenhower Presidential Library, Museum, and Boyhood Home, dedicated in 1962. It's in Abilene, Kansas. Next was the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum, which was dedicated in 1962 and located in West Branch, Iowa. Then the Lyndon B. Johnson Library and Museum in 1971, located in Austin, Texas. The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston, Massachusetts in 1979. Of course, as we've mentioned, the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. The library is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The library dedicated in 1981 and the museum in 1982. Next is the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, located in Atlanta, Georgia. It was dedicated in 1986. The Richard M. Nixon Presidential Library and Museum was dedicated in 1990. It became part of the NARA system in 2007 and is located in Yorba Linda, California. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and Museum is located in Simi Valley, California. It was dedicated in 1991. The George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum is located on the campus of Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas, and was dedicated in 1997. The William J. Clinton Presidential Library and Museum is located in Little Rock, Arkansas, and was dedicated in 2004. The George W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum is located on the campus of Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and was dedicated in 2013. The Barack Obama Presidential Library and Museum is a digital library, and there will be no physical building. The Donald J. Trump Library is actually official, since there are presidential records at this time within NARA. However, a physical location has not been announced. These libraries serve as valuable resources for researchers, historians, students, and the public, providing insight into the lives and administrations of U.S. presidents. All right, that being said, let's get this show snapping. First things first, let's drink some Twinings tea. You know I love Twinings tea. That's good tea. All right, here's a short biography of our guest. Brooke Clement is the director of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. Before her current role, she led the Obama Presidential Library in Chicago, where she directed the archival and museum team that developed the first all-digital presidential library. She has a bachelor's in history and American culture from the University of Michigan and a master's in American Studies from Columbia University. She has worked at NARA since 2004, first at the Ford Presidential Library, then at the George H.W. Bush Library and the George W. Bush Library. She joined the Obama Library as supervisory archivist in 2016, and in 2018 was named deputy director. All right. Welcome to the program, Brooke.
Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. I'm so interested in learning more about the Presidential Library, the differences of a presidential library. That's really very interesting to me. Hey, what's the history of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum?
When President Ford became an accidental president, he decided he would follow in his predecessor's footsteps and create a library and museum, which were both opened in 1981. We are the only presidential library that is split into two facilities. The library itself is in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the museum is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm actually at the Grand Rapids location today. And he did this because as congressman, for the 25 years he was congressman, he had been donating his congressional records to the University of Michigan at their Bentley Historical Library. And then he became vice president and continued that practice. And then when he became president, he did not want to remove his records from the University of Michigan campus. He wanted the records to be available and accessible to college students there. And so he opted to create two distinct facilities, one of which is in Ann Arbor, which is the library, which is where his presidential records, his vice presidential records, his congressional records, his post-presidential records are all located. Then he opted to create the museum here in Grand Rapids because this is where he grew up. This was his constituency base. And he wanted to have a facility here, located here, that would honor that as well.
Okay, well, that makes more sense. But it'll never happen again, right?
It'll never happen again.
We hope.
The one and only.
Of course, presidents could do that anytime again in the future, couldn't they?
They might opt for that, but as far as it becoming a National Archives run facility, I'm really not sure. I don't believe it's just a difficult standard in terms of how the facilities were created. And since he did this, there have been many modifications to the Presidential Libraries Act as well. So I'm not really sure that it would be feasible in the future.
Interesting to manage, I bet, too, huh?
It is. We like to say that we have an administrative hallway that is 130 miles long.
So what is Gerald R. Ford and Betty Ford's impact on the president? What are their legacies?
Well, I would say that President Ford's legacy is one of healing, of compassion. That really seems to be what we tend to think of his presidency more based in terms of compassion, mercy, grace. Those characteristics are definitely very forthcoming when you think about the man and the president. And then with Mrs. Ford, we certainly see her legacy even go further from when she was First Lady, where she was very public and candid about her breast cancer diagnosis early on in the administration. And then when they both left office, her issues and her struggles with substance abuse. I think that she carved out her own role in terms of advocating for a better, less stigmatized issues with regard to public health and especially substance abuse.
I was aware of her struggle with breast cancer, but not her struggle with substance abuse. What was that all about?
She became very public about the fact that she was addicted to painkillers. In the 1960s, she did something to her back and neck and at that time, it was very common for doctors to prescribe prescription painkillers. And so she became addicted to those. And she also struggled with alcoholism. And in 1978, I believe, she went into rehab and became very vocal about her conquering those addictions. And then the fact that she created the Betty Ford Center so that way others could have access to that kind of medical assistance in the same way that she was able to as well.
Oh, B. Yeah, I never knew about that part of her life. That's amazing. Huh.
It is.
That changed a lot of medical opinion, I bet.
Oh, for sure.
Now, what unique challenges or opportunities do you face in safeguarding the former president's legacy and the mission of the institution?
I think that one of the main challenges that we face is the fact that these records are not modern records. The presidential records themselves are about 50 years old. We have a lot of pre-presidential records as well. And if you think about the different types of paper or legacy audiovisual materials that were available in the 50s, 60s, 70s, we definitely have them all. We have film, we have video, we have beta, we have all the types. And so it is very challenging to ensure that these records remain preserved and accessible in perpetuity.
How do you handle that? I mean, do you have to take those from those legacy formats and move them to modern formats?
Yes, so that is something that we are currently working on. We have an audiovisual archivist and team that helps in terms of digitizing the materials and making them available in a more modern format.
Oh
But
God.
that does take a lot of work and a lot of equipment that we hope continues to stay relevant and stay up to date so that way we can finish the projects.
No kidding. And I mean, who knows? I mean, like right now, I know like JPEG and I don't know, PNG and uh,
Hmm.
MP4, those are sort of the modern formats that I know of, but
Hmm.
that could change tomorrow.
It really could. They don't seem to stick around for very long, these different formats.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's always a race against time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And when you've got, I don't know, quads of presidential material, gosh, you have a
Yep.
big challenge there.
Yes, we do, but it's also job security.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, do you have people that take that material and interpret it, or has it already been through the historians and is it already interpreted? Has it all been through some historian's eyeballs?
No, I would say that not all of it has been accessed by historians. A lot of it has, but there's definitely materials that, we're still ourselves processing over at the library. And so, we're hoping that, as we do so, we're making it accessible and open to historians, and we get a lot of researchers in each year. So we're happy to make sure that it's available.
Do you think that there will be a time when you will point all of that material, the 100 quad acres or whatever, however much it is, at an AI program to interpret in some way?
It's a possibility. I mean, because the materials we're working with are in the public domain, there's nothing to say that, like, even if we don't, it's public domain materials, so it would be available to others who may want to do such a thing as well. I
Somebody
think
could, yeah.
we would love to be out in front of that as a National Archives in terms of being able to identify those records and make them AI approachable, but we have so many records across the National Archives. It's likely not going to be us that necessarily does that, but we want to be able to get out in front of it in terms of making sure that as accurate as we possibly can make it.
Wouldn't that be something? Wow. I think that would be amazing. I don't think we're too far away from that either.
No, I don't think so.
Huh. Just so myself and other people can fully appreciate the differences, how do the operations of a federally funded presidential library and museum differ from other types of historical museums, especially that one like yours has a presidential burial site on the grounds?
We are administered by the National Archives and Records Administration, so we are part of the federal government, and our funding comes directly through the executive branch budget each year, and that's how we can maintain our buildings, which also, for many of us, include burial sites. And then in terms of the burial sites, we do have security, we have maintenance, we make sure that it's kept up and looking very nice for and safe for our visitors.
Okay, got it. So it all comes through the executive branch. So the money comes from Congress and it comes through executive?
Yeah, it is approved by Congress, but it is part of the executive branch's overall budget.
Oh, okay, got it. Interesting. What are some intriguing lesser-known stories from Gerald and Betty Ford's history that your organization showcases?
In terms of our museum, we showcase the early lives of, well, the early life of President Ford, really. Hopefully in a future iteration of the permanent exhibit, we'll have more with Betty. We do touch on her, but not in the same way as President Ford. But we talk about the fact that President Ford was not born Gerald R. Ford, that he was born Leslie Lynch King Jr., and that he was raised by a man named Gerald R. Ford Sr. And in the 1930s, he opted to change his name to reflect and honor the man that raised him. So a lot of people come away not realizing that President Ford had that kind of background, that he came from a broken home initially, that his mother was a survivor of domestic abuse. And so it really kind of humanizes the man, and a lot of people then can draw connections, sadly, to his story in that way.
Yeah. Well, I started thinking the Ford name in Michigan is, Henry Ford is part of Ford,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is there a connection with...
Not the same Fords, though.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, two different Ford families.
Okay. Well, to me, President Ford always reminded me of like a coach. He was always that, I don't know, however a coach strikes you, sort of like a mentor kind of guy. Real honest mentor kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that he would be very agreeable to that kind of representation of himself. He definitely was very active in athletics. He was a coach during his time at Yale University. And even when he was in the Navy during World War II, he was kind of like the physical education director on the on the USS Monterey. So he definitely had that kind of upbringing and work ethic in terms of coaching.
Yeah, he was a good guy in my book anyway. I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. Folks, you can find them on the web at fordlibrarymuseum.gov. That's for the museum. And remember, there's two parts to this, the museum and the library. The museum is at 303 Pearl Street, Northwest, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49504. And you can phone them at 616-254-0400 and email them at ford.museum@nara.gov. And the library is at 1000 Beal Avenue, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48109. And the phone is 734-205-0555. And you can email them at ford.library@nara.gov. You can find them on Facebook at Ford Presidential Library, and on YouTube at GR Ford Library Museum, and on X at Ford_Library, and on Instagram at Ford Library Museum. Does that all sound right, Brooke?
It sounds right, and it sounds like a mouthful.
You bet. Can you kindly share with the audience the mission and objectives of your museum and library?
Of course. Our mission is to preserve the historic materials of President and Mrs. Ford from their time as President and First Lady, but as well as make sure that we are preserving and chronicling their lives in their entirety. And our goal is then to make that material accessible to the public through our programs, our events, research, access, exhibits, and the like.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And that's the difference between a presidential museum and library and a regular historical society. As a historical society focuses on sort of a place and the history of a place, and a presidential library focuses on a person.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And all the life of a person and their political career.
Yes, I completely agree with that statement.
Okay. Now, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background? We have your bio, and you're just professionally elite. But I'd like you to be a little more personal about your background, how you came to do what you do now.
All right. I grew up, well, when I was in high school, I thought for sure I would wind up with a public history degree and that I would one day become a museum curator. And that was the path I was assuming I would be on when I graduated from high school. And then I went to the University of Michigan and I graduated there with a degree in history and American culture. And while there, I did do an internship at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, which I loved. It was so much fun. And so I continued thinking that I was going to one day be a museum curator. After graduating from the University of Michigan, I went to graduate school at Columbia University in New York. And while there, I did a work study in their university archives. And so I had that in my back pocket as well. And it was something that I could use in my resume. And when I graduated with a master's degree from that university, it took me about 1.5 years to find a job. And that job wound up being as an archives technician at the Ford Library in Ann Arbor. I got my foot in the door. I was hired in as a federal employee at that time, and I stayed there for about 2 years, a little over 2 years, and then moved to Texas for 10 years, where I worked at both Bush libraries there. And then in 2016, I moved to Chicago, where I worked at the Obama Presidential Library. And then after about 5 years there, I became acting director of the Ford Library Museum. And so I've come full circle, and I truly enjoy it. Like I really do enjoy working with the archival records, but in this position too, I get to also work with the museum staff and the exhibits. And so it does feel like, those high school dreams did come true.
I'm so jealous. You get to lay your hands on so much wonderful material.
It is fun. And, there are definitely, there are definitely perks to the job. And I truly, I don't take that for granted. I really do love what I do.
No kidding. And especially the people that are interested in joining and donating and becoming part of that world and supporting the museum and library are just the best people in the world.
They really are. And they really love being part of it too.
Now, what's coming up on the horizon for the museum and library? Are there any upcoming exhibitions or events that the community can look forward to?
Absolutely. We are in the throes of commemorating the 50th anniversaries of President Ford's vice presidency, which we had an exhibit that went up in August of last year. But we're going to be taking that down in the next couple weeks here, because we're making way for our 50th anniversary exhibit of his presidency, in which we will be diving a little deeper into topics that we do discuss in our permanent exhibit, but we don't have the bandwidth or the space to really go into on a deeper level. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to talk about some of the decisions that President Ford made and would lean towards that idea of President Ford as a healer. So we're looking at his clemency program, his pardon of Nixon, the Helsinki Accords, the Mayaguez crisis, the Operation Baby Lift, and the New York financial crisis. We'll also commemorate Mrs. Ford's 50th anniversary of her breast cancer diagnosis with a small exhibit as well. And we're also going to be doing something over at the library to commemorate the 50th using the same ideas in terms of the decision making, but we'll be displaying Oliphant cartoons.
Oh, nice.
In doing. Yeah. So we have a really lovely collection of those.
Oh, very cool. That'll be great.
Yeah.
For those folks who have not seen the Presidential Library and Museum, especially the museum, I need you to go to your favorite app and do images and look up the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum and just look at it. It is a beautiful institution, absolutely beautiful. And Brooke is the director, and man, I tell you, it's really something. Take a look at it. Now, Brooke, how do you envision the museum and library's role in the community evolving in the coming years?
Like, I think that we are actively working on digitizing as much or all of the presidential materials and the records that we have. We want to make sure that people have access to these materials, even if they're not able to make it there in person. We're in the process actually of updating our website, which will include a digital research room, which will make searching for these materials even easier. And so we are hoping to launch that later this summer. Our goal is to launch it on August 9th, which would be the 50th anniversary of the presidency. And I would say that we are constantly looking for key partnerships in our communities. We want people to see this place as a place for them and not necessarily as a temple to the 38th president of the United States.
Okay, fantastic. What percentage would you say of the materials that you have in your collection are digitized?
It's a small amount. I would say at this point we're probably under 1%, but we are certainly starting to staff up a little bit better in that area, and with more staff we will be able to bring in more resources in terms of internships or work studies. So we're definitely looking at ways in which we can resource this better.
Okay, so there's still some time to go.
Oh yes. For sure.
All right. So maybe, I don't know how long this would take. Probably another 5 years?
Oh, I'm not going to put a timetable on it.
Okay.
I really don't know, and honestly, even if it were digitized, it doesn't mean that it won't be available to the public still. It's just that it's making sure it's available to the public in a variety of means and ways.
Okay. Got it. So once it's digitized, doesn't mean it's automatically available.
Well, no, it means people can access it digitally, but they may also want to access it in person also. So in terms of doing on-site research.
All right. Got it. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the most memorable moments or experiences visitors have shared after visiting the museum or the library?
So just last week, we actually had a couple visit from out of state. They came to a conversation with our curator with cookies and coffee. And they had never visited a presidential library and museum before. And they commented to us on how they felt that history can often seem flat, but because they could see the artifacts up close and personal, and they heard about the backstories of these artifacts, they could now better understand how the parts connected and could see the whole picture. And their time with us inspired them to visit other presidential libraries and museums. We actually, connected them to one of our newest staff persons who came to us from the Hoover Library and Museum. So hopefully they will be making their rounds now and to all the different presidential libraries. And that's really what it's all about.
What's interesting to me when I look at that is I see what the man or woman who was president had to look at during that time. They had a limited view of the information that they were trying to make a decision about, right? They had political concerns, and they had international concerns and national concerns and all of these things that they were looking at. And they had people talking in their ear at the time. And they had these, what do you call those things on horses? Blinders on them. And you get to see that in hindsight. If you're looking at all the materials, and if you have someone at the museum who can sort of interpret that for you and give you that sort of picture of what the person was looking at that time and how they sort of formulated that decision in their mind based on who they were, right? And that to me is the interesting part. That we might have made a different decision in hindsight with all of the things that we have to look at in hindsight, but they only had what they had. And
right.
And that to me is very exciting, very interesting. So you've talked a little bit about the exhibits, but what other exhibits are on display?
We have both temporary exhibits and permanent exhibits. Our permanent exhibits right now covers the life of President Ford, and then also kind of touches on Mrs. Ford's story here and there, but not everywhere. It's really more about President Ford himself. And then we have temporary exhibits that we bring in and rotate out. Right now, we are working on 50th anniversary temporary exhibits, but in the past we've had exhibits on such things as the Sistine Chapel, or the guitar, National Guitar Museum brought in an exhibit that we had in our temporary display space. So we tried to also bring in other culturally relevant exhibits that people may enjoy and may not have opportunities to see elsewhere.
Yeah, I like the fact that you bring in exhibits from other places around the nation. I don't know about around the world. You bring in exhibits from around the world?
Well, sort of. Like I said, we did have the Sistine Chapel exhibit here. Yeah. That was done by a U.S. company, but they did go to the Sistine Chapel and they made incredible scans of the paintings, so that way they could then make them. You could basically get right up in front of the paintings themselves, and you weren't seeing them with your head, stuck in an awkward position. You could actually see them up close and personal.
That's cool. That's way cool. Wow. Right there at the museum. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any collections exhibited anywhere else in the area?
We do have an active loan program, and we currently have one piece that is at the Architect of the U.S. Capitol on loan. But that is the only object that we currently have on loan. But we do loan materials. We also are a borrower as well. So right now we have many items that have been borrowed from across the U.S. for our vice presidency exhibit. So yeah, we bring in things on loan, and we also loan materials out.
I got to tell you got to be very busy.
We are. We very much are.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's time for a break for a few minutes.
Okay.
All right, listeners, we'll be right back after these important messages.
Are you a history lover? Do you enjoy meeting new people and sharing stories from the past? If so, They have the perfect opportunity for you at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum in beautiful Grand Rapids. As a volunteer, you'll dive into the fascinating life and legacy of America's 38th president, Gerald R. Ford. Whether you're a seasoned history buff or just starting to explore, the museum offers a rich tapestry of exhibits and stories waiting to be discovered and shared. Imagine spending your days surrounded by incredible artifacts, learning about pivotal moments in American history, and engaging with visitors from all over the world. At the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum, you'll have the chance to inspire others with your enthusiasm and knowledge. Volunteering with the museum isn't just about giving your time, it's about becoming part of a vibrant community. You'll meet fellow history enthusiasts, make new friends, and create unforgettable experiences for the guests. From guiding tours to assisting with special events, there's a role for everyone. Ready to take the next step? Visit the website at fordlibrarymuseum.gov to learn more about the volunteer process and how you can get involved. That's fordlibrarymuseum.gov. Sign up today and start your volunteer journey. The Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum, where history comes alive and volunteers make a difference. Join them today.
Captain, our computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
You're listening to MicroStream Radio in Preservation Oaks, the world's only program communicating the value of museums, historical and genealogical societies across the USA. The most interesting show on the planet.
There are many things in the history of this country that you have never seen nor heard. Introducing Preservation Oaks, with new unique episodes featuring professional guests from across the country, telling unique true tales of the past that only they know. This podcast will bring you incredible knowledge and an appreciation of every area of our country. You'll hear history, with a clarity and vividness that until now were only in your fantasies. The Preservation Oaks Podcast. It will alter your view of the world. Listen at preservationoaks.podbean.com.
This is Taylor Volz, the director of the Historic Mobile Preservation Society, and I love listening to Sean Radcliff on MicroStream Radio.
This is Rhiannon Sisson, executive director of the Berrien County Historical Association. I had a lot of fun as a guest on Preservation Oaks.
This is Derek Scott, president of the Chilton County Historical Society, located in Clanton, Alabama, and I listen to Sean Radcliff and Preservation Oaks on MicroStream Radio.
Buckle up for safety, buckle up. Buckle up for safety, always buckle up. Pull your seatbelt snug, give an extra tug. Buckle up for safety, buckle up.
Buckle up for safety, buckle up. Buckle up for safety, always buckle up.
The National Safety Council says if you don't have seatbelts, get them. If you do have seatbelts, use them.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hello. Good evening, Mr. Martin. It's Hans here. Sorry to call you at home, but it's about the new building. The new building we had the grand opening for last month. The $125 million building. Well, you know how we here use the metric system, obviously. Turns out the engineers don't. So, because of that it appears to be leaning somewhat dramatically. We got jacks and might save it yet, but statistically speaking it's unlikely. So please call me back, please.
Have some unexpected free time coming up soon? Make good use of your free time listening to Preservation Oaks.
And now, back to Preservation Oaks.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, Sean Radcliff, and we're here today with Director Brooke Clement from the Gerald R. Ford Museum and Library in the Wolverine State of Michigan. Let's pick up where we left off, and welcome back, Brooke.
I'm glad to be back.
Brooke, can you discuss any recent conservation efforts or restoration projects related to the museum's exhibits?
We will, from time to time, make some modest updates to our exhibits. We like to rotate materials in and out of our exhibit cases, especially those that are more of a textile in nature, because having too much light on those will eventually degrade the artifact itself, and we want to make sure that we're preserving these forever. And so actually in the last year, we've had our museum team has rotated out some of Mrs. Ford's dresses. We actually had a local person here in the Grand Rapids area create some replica baby clothes of President Ford, so that way we could also display those and give his actual baby clothes a rest from being on display. So there are things like that that we do in order to make sure that we are conserving and preserving the materials we have.
So you have a full staff or some staff of archivists and curators?
We do have a full staff. Our museum staff consists of a curator, a registrar, a museum technician, and an exhibit specialist.
Okay.
So it's a small team, but it is a mighty team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like they're very qualified and they really take care of these objects.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
They have even, threatened to harm me if I come too close to things.
Okay. I guess they are serious. Wow.
They're not joking around.
No kidding. Now, are there any plans to expand the museum's facilities or collections in the future?
We are always looking for collections that maybe will help fill out holes in our current collections if there are such things. But President Ford and Mrs. Ford, friends and the administration staff that they had at that time that they were in office, a lot of them are beginning to pass away, unfortunately. And so the odds of us being able to collect a lot more that is relevant to the Fords themselves may not necessarily be something that we will be able to do. But I mean, if there's other areas in which it would make sense for us to collect, maybe something about the 70s or certain things of that nature, we certainly would be open to that. But we're not necessarily looking to bring in a lot more in terms of collections. And yeah.
Okay. Can you highlight any efforts to make the museum accessible to a broader audience, including those with disabilities?
There are always ways in which we can improve the experience for those with disabilities. I will say, our buildings themselves, they were built before the ADA was passed. So we are still looking at ways in which we can improve and actually be in compliance with the ADA in both of our buildings. But we also look at each new refresh of our exhibits in ways that we can explore how we could be better. I know that even with the most recent iteration of our permanent exhibit, it does lack in terms of what we could provide for people with visual disabilities. So it's just trying to make sure that we are constantly aware and looking at how we can improve the experience for everyone involved.
That's got to be the toughest thing. I wouldn't even know how to approach something like that. Do you do Braille or something, or do you have a button for audio?
I mean, I think that those are all areas in which we would want to look at. Do we provide an audio experience when there are people that may not be able to read or see the materials, or is there a tactile way of making the exhibits accessible?
I didn't know if there was some kind of standard in the museum world where it says, okay, here's the design specs for making it accessible to everybody.
That's a good question. I'm really not sure if there's something specifically laid out as a standard or if there are just good models that can be looked to.
Yeah. I may look into that. That's an interesting question to me. Now, if the museum were to catch fire, not to say that it will, and I'm sure you have very good suppression systems, but if it was, what things would you grab on your way out?
So I've gotten some really interesting looks at me when I've said what I would personally save if this were me. I really think that President Ford's pipes that we have are really quite characteristic of him, and I think it's really neat that you can tell they were used because his teeth marks are in them. So I would probably pick some of his pipes to save if there was a fire. But the other object that I think is very unique to the Ford story, and one that I personally enjoy telling people, is about a wolfskin coat that we have on display. And this wolfskin coat is important because he was wearing one very similar to that when he went to the USSR and met with Leonid Brezhnev. And Brezhnev, during the entire conference, kept touching this wolfskin coat, like, caressing President Ford's arm, and just loved it. And I guess towards the end of that conference, Henry Kissinger went up to President Ford and said, "President Ford, you do realize that you're going to have to give him this wolfskin coat."
Oh, no.
And so President Ford did. He gave Brezhnev the coat. And when he got back to the U.S., the creator of the coat, who happened to be an Alaskan, sent President Ford another copy of the wolfskin coat. So we have that on display.
Oh, my goodness. Do you think President Ford, did he vacation in like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or something where he would wear the wolfskin coat?
No, he was on his way to the USSR, and they stopped in Alaska to refuel. And so while he was there, this Alaskan man gifted him this coat, and he did not come back with it.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's a nice story. Very cool. And that's on display at the museum.
It is.
Wow.
It very much is.
Very cool. I'd like to see that. Now, what kind of outreach and education does the museum undertake within the community? What kind of work does the museum do with school children?
Well, we do have an education specialist, and he offers on-site experiences for school groups. He teaches courses on citizenship, but we also do school group visits. Like right now, we're towards the end of our school year, so we do seem to be getting a lot of people coming in for field trips, before the school year ends. But we can do single classroom, we can do self-guided visits for larger groups. We do have a docent corps who can come in and assist and provide a led tour through the museum as well. Okay. And then our educator also provides virtual classroom experiences through our National Archives and Records Administration's Civics for All of Us program.
In-class virtual Civics for All of Us. That's in addition to the citizenship class?
Yes.
Wow.
He's busy.
No kidding. Wow. Now, we've got a lot of immigrants coming into the country right now. Do any of them come to the museum to get any kind of training in the United States to help them?
I don't know if we can say training per se, but we have naturalization ceremonies here, which are beautiful. We absolutely love having those ceremonies here. It's emblematic of President Ford's desire to see the growth of the nation in that way.
Well, absolutely. There's nothing more civic than that.
And be welcoming to all groups as well. And so, we do that. We also, through the New York Historical Society, we have partnered with them to bring these educational resources to students who are learning the citizenship test. And that's what our educator is working towards.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, anything to help, help them acclimate and become good citizens. Yeah, you bet. Very cool. The museum's doing a lot. That person is busy.
That's right.
Now, how do you engage with the schools and education programs to educate local students about specifically Gerald R. Ford and Mrs. Ford?
So our museum works with several non-school community partners. We definitely want to focus on reaching the underserved and underprivileged youth in the area. We want to make sure that they also know that this is a place that is for them and that hopefully they can learn about somebody that was in their community too some time ago that became president of the United States. And how cool is that? We offer tours, we do programs. We're starting working with summer groups and summer camps this summer with a focus on making sure that the kids in this area know that they have a place here.
Yeah. And the cool thing about America is you don't know that any one of those kids that you're trying to teach will be a president in the future.
Right.
Absolutely. Now, what kind of annual or holiday events does the museum sponsor?
I don't know that we would use the word sponsor so much, but we definitely are partners in the community in terms of spelling, like the local spelling bee. We partner each year with Grand Rapids Art Prize, which is a huge event in late September, early October, where artists from around the world display art throughout the community. And so we are a venue location for that. We partner with our presidential foundation, the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation, on an essay contest each year. And then we have pretty standard exhibits that we bring back each holiday season too, such as our presidential train that, is a small locomotive, like fun little toy train that we set up, but it's huge. And so
yeah, exactly. That's what I saw the pictures and I could not decide from the pictures. Is this a big train or is this a little model?
It's a model train, but the setup, the table and everything like that, like it is massive.
Yeah.
And so we have actually, I think, 3 to 4 different tables now. And each year we kind of build in new elements so the public can kind of see what we're still up to. And I think this past year was actually the museum itself, and I'm not sure what they're planning on building out this year for our exhibit, but that's always fun for people to keep coming back and seeing what new elements to that table have been added.
It's very cool. Very cool. What's the best way for a member of the public to show their support for the library and museum?
Just come visit us. We definitely want people to come in and engage and see what we've done to make history come alive for them here. We also would love for them to follow us on social media, and we would certainly welcome any donations to the National Archives Trust Fund. That's funding that would be made available to us as an organization outside of a federal government budget, and would be something that we could use to put forth towards programming, marketing for upcoming exhibits and things such as that.
So they can donate directly to you and know that the money's going to go to your museum?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. And they can do that through your website, or how do they do that?
They could contact us through the myriad different ways that you had earlier suggested, but they can contact us through the website, or they can email us and ask how to go about this. We will certainly walk them through the process. But even if they were to want to just send us a check, if they make it out to the National Archives Trust Fund and send it to our address, we'll make sure that it gets into the proper location.
Okay, cool. That's very cool. And those donations, so even though you're federally funded, you still need donations to do your community work and all of the things that you do outside
Absolutely.
of the money you get from the feds.
Absolutely. I will say, like, the National Archives and Records Administration, many people don't know this, but it's over 40 buildings. And so you think about all the buildings and all the records that are within that. And our budget is just a portion of the executive branch budget. So it's a limited budget. We want to make sure that we're still making making good use of resources wherever they're coming from. And so if that means that we can do things outside of the federal budget portion with our trust fund monies, we want to be able to do that, to be able to make sure that that budgetary constraint can be, sent to another organization or another unit within the National Archives that may need that money more than we do.
Sure. Plus, you can be more specific and targeted within the community to meet the community's needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very cool. I just didn't realize that people could give and have it focused in their community. That's great.
For sure.
Now, how do you keep the community informed about the progress of the museum? So if I give and I want this money used there, how do you keep the community informed about the progress of the museum in achieving the mission?
We usually do that mostly through social media. We want to make sure that people are engaged and seeing what's happening in real time. So our posts are generally very, very timely. And then once our website is updated this summer, we're going to be using that a lot to keep everyone informed. We're working towards getting an e-newsletter out there as well. And then, it's just, we want to make sure that we're doing good outreach in the community and working with partners that may need our resources in ways. And if there's something that we can do to supplement here and there in terms of, just people resources or other ways, we're open to those discussions with community partners as well.
Cool. Are you doing any radio, TV, any of that stuff?
Absolutely.
Right.
I actually have an interview tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Boy, you are a busy person, I'll tell you. Wow. All right. Well, what kinds of records or historical artifacts has the museum received as donations from the public?
Oh, wow. Pretty much everything. So President Ford actually donated all of the materials that are presidential record related to the National Archives. This was prior to the Presidential Records Act when he did this. After Nixon left office, the federal government started looking at how they could ensure that the records that used to be considered personal private records of the president would indeed become federal record or become records of the people. And so the Presidential Records Act didn't go into effect until 1981. So that meant that President Ford's records and President Carter's records fell under the older way of doing this, which was that those records were donated back to the federal government. So yeah, we have all of our collections then are considered deeded materials.
Wow. And you mentioned that people that knew the Fords also have donated things. And I'm sure that there's still people out there that maybe have given things to their children who will donate them at some point to the museum. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get calls quite frequently still of people who have materials that, maybe it's more about University of Michigan, or maybe it's, some other, very, tangentially related item that they want to make sure, like, hey, would this be something that you'd be interested in? And we're always happy to talk them through it. We may take it, we may not, but we certainly want to have those conversations with people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Now, I read that you have literally thousands of artifacts. I read that on your website. Do you use Past Perfect or Catalog IT software?
The software program that we use is called TMS. I'm not even really sure what that stands for. I think it's the museum something. But it is a cataloging software that is used across the National Archives for artifacts.
And you said that you're digitizing, you've got about 1% done, and eventually that will probably end up on your website where people can search through that.
Right. Well, I was speaking more towards the digitization of the presidential record materials, but we are digitizing the artifacts too, and they are going to be made available through a digital artifact collection on our website. And so we're really excited about that. We're going to launch that along with our new website this summer, and so people are going to be able to get a really much more refined and close look at the artifact collection itself too.
Cool, a new website. I got a question coming up about the website. That's great.
Okay.
Now, does your museum capture oral interviews at all?
We do have some oral history collections. We don't really have, I wouldn't really say we have an active oral history program right now. Many of the administration officials and close family friends have passed away. So that's not as relevant currently in terms of capturing, but we certainly would be open to, if there were oral histories that we haven't considered, we probably would be very interested in learning more about that. And we even have the oral histories and transcripts that were done by President Ford when he was writing his book, A Time to Heal. So we do have quite a good collection of oral histories.
Okay. But if there's anybody out there that knew the Fords and had a relationship with them in some way that...
I mean, we do have quite a lot of that already available. And I know that our foundation partner also did an oral history program as well. And those are available on their website. Those transcripts are available on their website. So it feels like a lot of that is kind of dwindling at this time in terms of us reaching anyone else.
Yeah, it's getting 50 years on now, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I wanted to volunteer at the museum, what kinds of volunteer opportunities does the museum have?
So we have 3 teams of volunteers that support our mission. We have docents who give guided tours to our school groups and occasionally an adult group visit. Our gallery guides will float through the museum exhibits and answer questions and provide a friendly face to our visitors. And then we also have our train team, which I spoke of a little earlier, and they help out with our Gerald R. Ford Presidential Express model train exhibit. And they are the ones that design and create each new element that they bring in each year.
Very cool. And the cool thing to me about volunteering is you get to be a part of it. You get to see all this material, and you get to be a part of reading this material and training people and talking about these things, and especially getting to hear all the neat questions that people have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wow. Wow, nice. How do they go about, signing up? Do they contact you, or is there a thing on your website, or how does somebody do that?
Yeah, we would definitely encourage them to reach out to us at ford.museum@nara.gov. If they send an email to that account with their interest, that email will get to the correct person, and that will usually be our educator, and he will then walk them through the process of what it takes to sign up to be a volunteer. We do, because we are a federal institution, we do require a background check. So we would make them fill out some paperwork and go through that process. But it's painless, and we definitely would love it if we could get more volunteers on board here.
Yeah. You do any work with like the local groups like VFW or the Elks Lodge or the Boy Scout, any of those pools of local community groups?
We certainly work with them, and there are times where we do partnered things with them as well. Like you mentioned the Boy Scouts. We do each September 11th, the Boy Scouts come out here and do a salute the flag event. And then we also do partner with Armed Forces Thanksgiving, which is a community program that sees scholarships go to area schools that talk about military experiences, but also just like building up a community and veterans and things of that nature.
Oh, very cool. You're all over this stuff, I'll tell you. Just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just while we're talking about this, to connect with the museum, remember the museum and the library are separate. So the museum is www.fordlibrarymuseum.gov. And they're at 303 Pearl Street Northwest, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49504. And you can phone them at 616-254-0400 and send them an email at ford.museum@nara.gov. And the library is at 1000 Beal Avenue, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48109. And you can phone them at 734-205-0555 and email them at ford.library@nara.gov. You can find them on Facebook if you search for Ford Presidential Library, and on YouTube at GR Ford Library Museum, and on X at Ford_Library, and on Instagram at Ford Library Museum. All right, now the website. I love talking about your website. What kind of things are available to do on your museum's website, and when is the new one coming?
I would really encourage people to wait until the new one comes, because we're kind of in a holding pattern in terms of putting new material up on our current website as we're migrating to a new website. But our new website will be coming later this summer with a launch date of August 9th, which is the 50th anniversary of President Ford being sworn in as president. Yeah, we're reimagining how we make this material accessible through our website. It's going to offer visitors an opportunity to explore timelines of not just President Ford, but also Mrs. Ford, and then what does that look like with them together as well. People will be able to view galleries of images from their pre and post presidential times. And it's just really going to offer users a much more user-friendly online research experience. The search capacity and capabilities that will be in our new website are going to be so much better and fine-tuned to be able to really locate the materials you're searching for. So we're really looking forward to that.
Very cool. I know today I can go to the website, and I've done it, and there's little arrows I can click on, and it sort of takes me on a tour through the museum.
Yeah, there is that, and we'll still have something like that available on our new website.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that. I get stuck in places though.
That has happened to me as well.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be great to have a new website, and that's coming in August, huh?
Yes.
Very nice. And today, though, up until August, I can buy stuff from the store, and I can get books, and I can do things like that on your website.
Yes, and that will still be available and accessible once we go live with our new website as well. That e-store is kind of done separately, but we then link to on our website. So that website will still remain, and we hope people come to it and find things that they may like, or just come into the museum itself and peruse the store.
Fantastic.
It's a great little store.
Yeah, you even have bobblehead presidents.
That we do.
Yeah. I was looking at them. They're cool. Brooke, it's time for us to take a break for a few minutes.
Okay.
All right, listeners, we'll be right back.
Do you want to help preserve the legacy of one of America's great leaders? At the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum, they're dedicated to celebrating and preserving the life and legacy of President Ford. Their mission is to keep history alive, engaging, and accessible for everyone. But they can't do it alone. They need your support. By making a donation to the NARA Trust Fund, you can help them continue their vital work. Your contributions enable them to bring in exciting new programming, from captivating exhibits that delve deep into pivotal moments of American history, to educational workshops that inspire young minds and special events that engage the community. Imagine the impact of your support. With your help, they can create a dynamic space where history comes to life. Visitors of all ages can explore the rich legacy of President Ford and the transformative era he shaped. Their programs and exhibits are designed to educate, enlighten, and inspire future generations, ensuring that the lessons of the past are never forgotten. Every donation, no matter the size, makes a difference. Your generosity helps them maintain and expand the collection, bringing history to life in ways that are both meaningful and memorable. It ensures that the museum remains a vibrant resource for scholars, students, and history enthusiasts alike. At the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum, they believe that history is not just about the past, it's about building a better future. Your support is crucial in helping them achieve this mission. To make a donation, visit the website at fordlibrarymuseum.gov. That's fordlibrarymuseum.gov. Join them in the mission to preserve and celebrate the history that shapes us all. The Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. Your support makes history happen. Donate today and be a part of something truly special.
In my first life, I was owned by a business, and a seamstress named Peggy used me every day, all day, and I worked like crazy for Peggy. Then the business closed, and I was inherited by the Webster family, and I worked like a couple of times a month, mostly for patching, but sometimes making dresses. Then, I was put in the basement, replaced by a newer model that used electricity. I lay there for years, collecting dust. They sat boxes on me. Finally, they pulled me out of there, and then the scariest thing in my existence happened. They had a discussion about throwing me away. You know, into the trash. Luckily for me, they decided to sell me at a garage sale, and I went to Marge. Finally, she donated me to the local historical society. They cataloged me, shined me up, oiled me, and made sure all my parts worked like new. Now, I'm on display for the community to see every day, and they marvel at the way I work. It took a long time, but I feel so proud that I can help others understand the past, which I guess I'm now a part of.
Rather than throwing it out, please donate historical records and objects to your local historical society today.
This is an alien from planet Zang, and I listen to Sean Thomas Radcliff and Preservation Oaks.
9 out of 10 family historians agree Preservation Oaks is the best podcast on the internet.
And now, back to Preservation Oaks.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. We're here today with Brooke Clement from the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum and Library in the great state of Michigan. Brooke, thank you for the information you provided to our audience about your institution. I've learned a lot. Had a great time. Welcome back.
Thanks again for having me.
Can you tell the audience about any current initiatives or needs of the museum that you want the people of your area to know about and support?
Sure. Initiatives that we are currently actively working towards. I briefly mentioned this earlier, but we are bringing in some summer camps this year, which will be great, and it'll be fun to see all the kids here in the summer. We are continuing to work on digitization of the presidential record material at the library, which is a huge endeavor and one that could easily, need additional resources and support that people in the area could could, inquire more about. And we also are consistently looking at what necessary upgrades to our facilities may be necessary. We have 2 facilities that are over 40 years old at this point, and it takes a lot of financial resources and support to maintain them and keep them in good working order.
Yeah, I imagine, especially in the climate. I mean, you've got
Yes.
a lot of work to do every spring to bring those facilities back to good maintenance levels.
Absolutely. We actually just last week had a lot of work happening outside in terms of planting and sprucing things up.
Yeah, absolutely. Always something going on.
That's all right.
Now, based on your history, which is extensive, what are your thoughts about how best to keep history and community support flourishing for the current generation, the K through 12 kids?
I think that there's a real relevancy to the Ford story. As I mentioned, he came from a broken home. His mother fled a domestic abuse situation. And while these are tragic and horrible stories to consider in terms of the Ford story, it also is one that sadly may be found impactful in other youth in the current generation, and that we can hope that this is an area, at least in this one small area, that they could see themselves in, and how you go from being raised by a single mother to being a president of the United States. And we would certainly want kids to pick up on things where they may be able to see a little bit of themselves in the story. So even if it's not that, maybe it's the fact that he went and played football at the University of Michigan, or that he served in the military, or you name it. There are areas in which children should be able to at least see themselves a little bit in those stories.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way for people to connect with someone in the museum if they have questions?
We have 2 different email addresses. So we have an email address for the Grand Rapids Museum site, which is ford.museum@nara.gov. And if they are more interested in what's happening over at the Ann Arbor facility, the library, that's ford.library@nara.gov. And if somebody were to send it to the wrong location, we operate as one, so we will get the email to the correct people.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Brooke, you're a serious lover of history, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got such a diverse and professional perspective on history based on your experience and expertise. I asked this question of my guests recently because I'm trying to build a perspective of people that are such professionals. What do you think the world would look like in 100 years?
Wow. That is an excellent question. And, one that seems like it could be somewhat terrifying, but I think that there are a lot of improvements in terms of AI. And I think that particularly with our field, in terms of continuing to make history relevant and also accessible, AI is just going to be a huge thing for that. And, I believe AI can be a good thing as long as people are properly educated about it. I don't want to discount it because it could be a potentially good resource. And I know that, but there are ways that you have to work with it and not against it. And in terms of just personally, in 100 years, I'm looking forward to being teleported and, here and there, rather than having to travel by
You and me both, I'll tell you. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate your comments. Is there any other information or message you'd like the community to know about?
I just want people to continue to stay updated with our upcoming programs and exhibits. Programs are always advertised on our social media site as well as website. And we have a lot of really great upcoming programs that we hope people will come out and visit us for. It's all, because those are always free to the public, and we want to make sure that our programs are hitting the right points and that people will find them intriguing and educational and useful. And then just another note that like President Ford loved this community. He saw this as a place that could be a community space as well as a space for education. Not necessarily all about him or about the US presidency, but the role that American citizens can play in their communities and their governments.
Yeah, cool. Maybe someday there'll be a President Ford AI bot.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. I saw that recently on a Star Trek episode where they took all of the things that they knew, all of the records that they had on who was that? It was Sigmund Freud. And they built a Sigmund Freud kind of character in the holodeck. Oh, thank you, Brooke, for spending time with us today. You know, I've learned so much, and I've really come to form a new appreciation for the work you and your colleagues do and the role of a presidential museum and library in our nation. I really appreciate your time with us today, Brooke. Thank you again.
Well, thank you, Sean. I've really appreciated spending this time with you as well.
And with that, we'll end our time with our guest, Brooke Clement, the director of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum in Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Listeners, please stay tuned for my comments and wrap-up, which is coming up next. Hey, welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this enlightening episode, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our exceptional guest, Ms. Brooke Clement, the director of the Gerald R. Ford Library and Museum. Brooke, your education, background, and expertise have truly illuminated the unique role of the Gerald R. Ford Library and Museum and the distinctions between federally operated presidential museums and non-federally funded ones. Your insights have been invaluable. This episode wasn't about politics or party affiliations. It wasn't about Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, or Green parties. Today we focused on history and the remarkable Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum in Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids, Michigan. We explored the profound work they do within the community, highlighting a crucial part of our nation's heritage. Brooke shared some impactful quotes with us today. One that stands out to me is, President Ford loved Michigan and the Grand Rapids area. He didn't want the museum to be all about him or about the U.S. presidency, but rather about the role that U.S. citizens can play in their communities and their government. This sentiment reflects President Ford's deep connection to his roots and his vision for the museum as a place of civic engagement and community involvement. Another memorable quote from Brooke was, "We want people to see this place as a place for them, and not necessarily as a temple to the 38th President of the United States." I really like that. This reinforces the museum's mission to be accessible and relevant to everyone, encouraging visitors to see themselves as part of the ongoing story of our nation. One fascinating aspect of the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum is that it's the only presidential library split into two facilities, a library in Ann Arbor and a museum in Grand Rapids. Brooke reviewed the reasons why this came to be. In the end, I think this unique arrangement actually allows it to serve diverse functions and reach a broader audience. President Ford's legacy is one of healing and compassion. Coming from a broken home and overcoming personal hardships, he changed his surname from King to Ford to honor the man who raised him. This background shaped his character and leadership style, emphasizing empathy and unity. Both President and Mrs. Ford are laid to rest on the museum property in Grand Rapids, further cementing their deep ties to the area. Brooke and her team faced significant challenges, particularly in digitizing the vast collection of records from President Ford's lifetime and tenure. With less than 1% of these materials currently digitized, there's a monumental task ahead to preserve this valuable history for future generations. The Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum is part of the National Archives and Records Administration, also known as NARA, funded by the executive branch budget. This federal support underscores the importance of preserving presidential history as a national priority. President Ford's athleticism and service are also notable. He was a coach and athlete at Yale and while serving in the Navy, embodying the spirit of dedication and resilience. Mark your calendars for August 9, 2024, which marks the 50th anniversary of Gerald R. Ford becoming the 38th President of the United States. This milestone is a perfect opportunity to reflect on his contributions and the continuing relevance of his legacy, and it's a great date to visit the museum. Increasing visitor numbers and donor support is a pressing priority for the museum. As you've heard about the incredible offerings and programs, I encourage you to visit, engage, and support this invaluable institution. Dive into the pool of history and community at the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. The water's great, and it promises a rewarding experience for you and your family. One of the museum's unique artifacts is the wolfskin coat, similar to the one that President Ford gave to Premier Brezhnev during a Soviet Union conference. The story Brooke shared about it adds a personal touch to the historical narrative. You can see it at the museum. The museum is more than just a repository of artifacts. It provides citizenship and civics classes, both in person and virtually, and conducts naturalization ceremonies for new citizens. It serves the underserved in the community, offering summer camps and programs for kids. The museum's partnership with Grand Rapids Art Prize and the annual essay contest with the Gerald R. Ford Foundation further demonstrates its commitment to education and community engagement. Supporting the museum is straightforward. Visit, follow them on social media, and donate to the National Archives Trust Fund. Your support enables the museum to expand its offerings and impact. For those interested in volunteering, the museum offers opportunities as docents, gallery guides, and trained team members. Simply reach out via email if you'd like to get involved. Excitingly, the museum and library will launch a new website on August 9th. This new digital presence will enhance access to resources and information, making it easier than ever to connect with the museum's rich offerings. Thank you all for tuning in today. I hope this episode has inspired you to explore the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum. Support their mission and perhaps volunteer. One last time, here's the contact information for the Gerald R. Ford Library and Museum. The museum is www.fordlibrarymuseum.gov. They're located at 303 Pearl Street, Northwest, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49504. You can phone them at 616-254-0400, and you can email them at ford.museum@nara.gov. The library is located at 1000 Beal Avenue, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 48109. You can phone them at 734-205-0555, and you can email them at ford.library@nara.gov. You can find them on Facebook at Ford Presidential Library, on YouTube at GR Ford Library Museum, on X at Ford_Library, and on Instagram at Ford Library Museum. All right, that's a wrap for this episode. If questions occur to you and you'd like more information, please connect with the website via the contact information just provided. I hope this information helps the audience understand how valuable and meaningful the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Library and Museum are to the Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids communities, and what kinds of excellent events and opportunities they provide. The Gerald R. Ford Library and Museum in Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids, Michigan are absolutely beautiful institutions and are truly one of our nation's preservation oaks. Music used today is from Cymbalbird, Sync Hits, AG Soundtracks, Alan Gray, Score Wizards, Floruz Music, Orchestrales, and Scott Holmes. Microstream Radio is a registered trademark. You can visit us at www.microstreamradio.com. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted by Microstream Radio. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere without the written permission of Microstream Radio. Thanks everybody for listening. This is Sean Radcliff. We'll see you all next time on Preservation Oaks, and until then, keep on giving and keep on living the good life.